So Eddie Brennan is here. Eddie, you're living in your little hurling bubble over there, so we've just let Dick and Pat go, and I've tried to get you into the football chat, but I was told no, let's leave Eddie Brennan for the hurling. But I wanted to get your thoughts. So there was a moment in the Armagh-Tyrone game when Ciarán McGeeney reacts. So he's not happy with over-carrying play, and he reacts by kicking the sideline flag. It goes onto the pitch. David Goff stops it. Now, Ciarán McGeeney's he's not right in what he did, but he's right in his complaint that, I mean, Armagh caught the throw. It was Peter McGrain. Kick out went out to him, caught it, and he's tackled. So he should actually be given a free and a 50-metre advantage. But David Goff sees Ciarán McGeeney do that, brings it the other direction, and Tyrone score a 2-pointer. And this is 10 minutes down the stretch, right? And I'm thinking about you in your pure sort of uncorrupted hurling mind. You know, you don't have any of this stuff to worry about. How would you feel now if I said to you, in the hurling world, we are now bringing in a 2-pointer and we're bringing in 50 metres advantage, and if your manager even so much as says anything to me, I am bringing that ball up the other side of the pitch?
Yeah, it's sometimes things look really good on paper, and then there's the actual practicalities of how that plays out and how that's actioned, and there's a lot of things in that, and it's the $1 million question, and we'll always have it in decisions, and everyone is under pressure and all that kind of stuff. But I think that seems quite excessive for an encroachment for a manager. I think you can go deal with that in a certain way, and I'm not sure, is that specifically in the rules? I think the one where, and I think it possibly could be looked at in hurling, is that if you get lads, gamesmanship, as in holding onto the ball, not dropping, or whatever it is, like you say, you want a positive kind of, you want to drive it positively, and if lads are slowing it down, or there's a level of coaching going on there of slowing it down, and that's grand to get that on the field of play. But is there specifically a rule that says if the manager does that, I'm going to punish your players on the pitch? I'm not sure, and it seems excessive.
Yeah, and this is what the FRC are trying to drive now as well. They're trying to punish sideline descent by all pitch.
Excuse my ignorance, Conan, but is it actually a rule that if the manager encroaches, or is that specifically there that they punish it with a 50-metre free?
This is part of the new rules. Yeah, we'll bring it up to the other side of the pitch, and then you'll learn. And that's why I wanted. Look, I can see your reaction now. I heard a man, and you'd be like, "This is cop on here, lads."
Well, I can understand. I can see both sides of it. Absolutely, I think there's a merit in it. But then, like, and look, we all get frustrated, and we all fucking lose the head at times. But it's very difficult then when you see something quite blatant and it's missed, and you're in a match that's millimetres, and that could be the defining moment. And I suppose I'd show you a hurling example. Look at Wexford and Keith Roster the weekend with a penalty.
Yeah, and also like the relevant example here as well is Michael O'Donoghue encroachment on the sideline in Galway versus Offaly. The referee's no problem going over and chatting him, gives him a yellow card. It's a second yellow card. He's punished anyway, so it can be dealt with separately. He can face consequences separately. But I just thought the optics of this, 10 minutes to go, Ulster semi-final, it's all square, and then the ball's turned around. Tyrone get a 2-pointer, and there's a 2-point game now in a game that was nothing in it.
Yeah, I suppose I like the concept of trying to get out the back chat and all that kind of stuff, which referees generally, you'd say they shouldn't have to deal with that. We want to let the game flow and get on with it. But equally then there probably has to be some way of discussing that or chatting that. And I thought the first weekend of the hurling, I'm not just saying it because of hurling, I think the style of refereeing that went with both guys, and again, I'm only hearing feedback on what was heard through the mics for the boys chatting. It sounded very good. It sounded like both guys had good interactions with players and were firm in what they were doing. And sure, that's the ideal way we want games ref, but it's easier said than done because everyone is human and there's things happening, and it can get lost in the ether sometimes, and we all get hot and bothered. So it's hard to know, but it seems, in looking at it from not seeing that and not knowing anything about it, only what you explained to me, it seems a harsh penalty when you should have had a free or a possession, and suddenly the opposition kick a 2-pointer. Like, it's a big slap.
Yeah, thanks for humouring my Ulster semi-final chat, Eddie. I really appreciate it. It helps me helps me warm up into the hurling chat, because there was plenty of flashpoints in that to talk about as well. And I mean, I was going to say per Dara McCarthy, but it is per in this sense because there was a number of flashpoints here, and actually over the weekend his is probably the lesser of them all. I mean, if you think about the penalty incident that you talked about, the Sean Curry goal, that wasn't a goal, doesn't go over the line. So we could even start with that. So Dublin against Wexford at Park, and Mark Fanning makes a save from the penalty, and it goes in behind him, and he stops it on the line, so clearly on the line, scoops it up and away. And they give the goal. I think that is outrageous, carry on.
And again, I know it opens the conversation. God, wouldn't surely Big Brother be able to feed that information down so quickly and clarify it? And you just want to see, I suppose, it's commendable that officials are making decisions and they feel clear in it, but we can quite clearly see here, does Michael Kennedy go and consult, at least check with the boys that are in there and just be sure, because we can see and we have the benefit, and everyone has the benefit now of looking at that and slowing it down to a millisecond. Grant, we see that ball was not over the line, not even close to being over the line, and you see a decision. And like at that time, Wexford were 3 points up, they were hurling well, and it changed the game. The question is going to be in a couple of weeks' time, is it going to be a defining moment in Wexford's season? We saw it a few years ago with the famous Waterford goal that never was a goal. Do you remember Austin Gleeson, the one down in Limerick today? So these are things that I suppose in a singular event, it's not the end of the world. You say, okay, we understand everyone makes mistakes and it can be got wrong. I think you don't mind that in the broader scheme of things, but when it's such a big decision and such a big momentum shifter potentially, you kind of go, Jesus, that's... And you can understand, like, I thought Keith Roster handled himself very well. You could see he was clearly frustrated. And that's the thing. And, it's hard, but I still think we should be... I know VAR, and don't get to that argument, we've talked about this high up and low down and the mess that's in at the moment with certain things. But would it not assist... I suppose I'd be curious to know what's the referees' views on this. Would they like an additional layer to help them tidy up a decision? Because sometimes it can be, listen lads, I didn't see that at all. Did any of you see that? Bail me out here. No. Okay. Yeah. And we don't want it the whole time. But just that you have it there, that because the communication is there. They should be all mic'd up, chatting away. 4 and 13 are messing here off the ball. Will you come down and deal with them? Have a chat with them. Tell them to calm it down. That type of and look, that's the gold standard we'd love. Yeah, and like it definitely wasn't an isolated incident either, because it obviously set up the sequence of goals then that Dublin got. Wexford were the better team, and then suddenly Dublin bang 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 3 goals in a row, and it all sets off from missing this penalty that they get a goal for. But I think the problem here is that the ball stayed in place, and maybe the referee had to make a decision quicker, because I remember being at a club match in Derry during COVID, and a ref used VAR, but like he wasn't supposed to, obviously. But he just asked, because it was the first time that all the games were being recorded, and it was a championship final. I think it was an intermediate final, and there was a penalty decision. And he just stepped away for a second, and he was talking to the guys on the TV, or the fourth official who had the communication with the TV, and he was asking them to sort of clarify, was it in the box or not? And it was well done. A lot of people didn't know that that's what he did, but he definitely did do that. And I think more refs just do that themselves. That's the thing, and I'd love. I know the refs have to be the more than players; they have to believe in themselves and trust their team and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just looking at it from the point of view of, they need to be protected from the scenario now that kind of manifests afterwards, and you just don't want, because we need them, and I'm not going to, you want to try, I suppose, help it and make it. And I think from a player's and a manager's perspective, if you can see that is the right call, you won't have an issue with it at all. Yeah,
it's really, because he doesn't want to, he could have the best game in the world and then come off
in one decision.
And he hates that then. And it's like yourself no more. You could have a stormer and then make a big cock up that leads to a goal, and that's all you're going to think about.
And that's it. And I suppose, look, getting on to the hurling aspect of that match, I suppose everyone would have felt from the outset, looking in at Leinster, that could be the one for the third place, kind of as such. But Dublin have emerged from that now in a really strong position, and Wexford's season now is hinging on heading west. They have a big challenge there, so I suppose there's that aspect to it. And look, I for one as well, I think I'm guilty of definitely not looking at Dublin a little bit deeper up to now, because you were kind of, I suppose, when you're looking at predictions. But to be fair to Dublin, they've emerged, they've come in under the radar a little bit in Leinster, and they're now in a really good position.
Yeah. We'll actually come back to Dublin in a second and just how good they did look once they got it turned on. But the second flashpoint before we get to Darren McCarthy was obviously the Pairc red card away against Offaly. I mean, what was he doing here? We talked about Micheál O'Donoghue getting a yellow card for encroachment, which he gets a yellow card initially for his reaction to this. I think it's actually a reaction to Aidan Hart getting a red card, and he seems a bit bemused by that. But then the second yellow is for encroachment. I actually think this is... It's a separate issue, but it's a wider issue than Micheál O'Donoghue as well. Coaches and this habit of stepping onto the pitch. I mean, do you have this when you're coaching at the...
I have to say, I have... This is a big bee in my bonnet, particularly with underage. And I see it with underage coaches in on the pitch. It bugs me. We are the only sport, I reckon, in the world where this is going on. Yeah. And it's something I would really, really love them to deal with, because now there's an entitlement, and I see it at times. You go, well, if they're going to go onto it, well, why can't I? And you kind of go, no, the pitch is supposed to be absolutely and totally sterile. And I see it there. Like there was a quick example. There was, you see, and I see it even with schools and underage in particular. I just see it so often. You go, lads, we shouldn't be in there. And I know we're shouting, and the young lads might, you're trying to encourage them, or you're trying to come on, pick it up, or whatever. I just think it's a real cultural thing that I'd love to see. But coming back to the point, I'd love to see it getting taken away. I don't know. I think Micheál Donoghue gets frustrated, and we all understand that. But I think Micheál Donoghue is around a while. And I know sometimes we all hit the red mist and away we go. But at the same time, right here, right now, and it was okay to some degree. Galway were relatively in control of that match, but you kind of have to say, well, and again, it was like, well, okay, once get your slap. After that, then you have to be cute or whatever, play the game or stand back from it and try keep the focus. But it was a funny one because of the way it all happens. But Jesus, I suppose in some ways didn't this happen? The sending off point of it, didn't this happen with Tip and Waterford a few years ago? That Tip only got notified when they returned to the pitch, whereas at least this time the protocol was adhered to, and Galway were able to get their thinking caps on.
Yeah, and that is a real double blow then, for those teams to come back out at half time and they weren't preparing the whole time for 11, 14 men, but it did give them that option. Just to sort of flesh out that encroachment chat a little further, it is bad. And you see it at senior level as well. And the funny thing at senior level is you have all these coaches that are trying to coach width into teams, but then they are the width, they're 10, 15 metres in the pitch, and they just can't help themselves, and a lot of it is innocent. And
I'm not going to sit here and play innocent with this either. I have to be fair about it, right? And I detest going onto the pitch, but at times, an odd time, you can kind of lads, go over there and step on, and all you're doing is kind of getting into someone's eye line. Oh God, there's a opposition jersey. That goes on, and I think, okay, I can say that's a low level of it, but it's wrong too. I think the pitch needs to be absolutely sterile from all that. And we saw different people highlighting this. I think did it come about in some of the football matches where you had a water boy running in, but when someone looked up the fields, they see an opposition jersey, so it takes that space. And I think someone done a piece on it in the All Ireland in maybe 19 or something like that, the hurling All Ireland, something like that. So look, I just think I'd love to see this stopped, because it's just, I don't know, and what it leads to then is that you're kind of going, well, if they're in on the pitch and then suddenly it gets tense and this is playing out then on the pitch. And I just love to see referees be firm with this and get the backing of county boards and say, listen, if they're going to encroach, then there needs to be a punishment, and let's try it for 12 months, suffer the little bit of short-term pain for benefit.
I think it's so clear. There's a sideline there. There's a pitch that you're not playing in. You've no need to be on the pitch. I think it actually isn't too harsh just to give a red card anytime someone steps over the line. Why the hell would you be in the pitch? You're not playing the game, so just give a red card and be like, you're on the pitch. There's a match going on here. Get off the pitch, and you won't do it again, presumably, if you got a red card.
Yeah, surely. I suppose my idea of this, and talking waffle maybe to a degree, but if you had, for example, you pilot something and say, right, we're going with under 14 and under 16, and again, there's logistics involved in this because people are going to matches, and it's a big operation. However, you'd love to see that the referee has a support coming with him who's just going to sit there independently at an under 14 match. Both managers before, and lads, I want the pitch sterile. Any encroachment, you get a warning. If it continues, we're going to just turn. And both chairmen call him down and say, lads, I want the pitch sterile tonight. Any encroachment, we get a warning. If you encroach a second time, and I tell you, then I'm stopping the match and I'm going to turn around and award the match. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. Because I'd love to see it grow out of our game completely. Yeah. And I know that's a difficult task.
Yeah, and the last flashpoint of the weekend, I suppose. So
we're going to talk about Anton Good about the hurling.
So we are going to get to that. But Pairc obviously snaps his hurl over, I think it's Brian Dykeman's shoulder, and then Darren McCarthy is still the one who's being talked about the whole time. So the Cork Tipperary game, and again, I think this whole thing is bigger than Darren McCarthy. I mean, you would have been a young corner forward coming through. You're going down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh. You're told you're going to get this, you're going to get that. You need to stand up to it, and that's what he's doing. Like, he's obviously being confronted by a defender. He's using his hurl, which isn't advisable, but everything's going on the pitch, and the culture is stand up for yourself. Like,
well, look, I think if we were to look at, there was 2 games in the last 7 or 8 days where there was flashpoints and wrestling going on before the match. The common denominator is my neighbours in the blue and gold. and I get all that. I get the kind of the man-upmanship of kind of, you know, and I think there's an acceptable level of that. There's an acceptable level that's okay. But what we're seeing now is, and it's very difficult to police that because there's so much going on, but I think in the context of it, right, and I think we know the situation with, you know, Darren McCarthy getting sent off, and I just went, no, please not in the first minute, because the game is done, kind of, and yet Tipperary had chances. But with it, in the context of what's going on all over the field, and if we're talking about consistency, like, if that's the case, I saw what I believe was a Cork player using his head, you know, and close to an official, and from the point of view, right, Darren McCarthy, take off the jerseys and say the incident of that is a striking action, it's a red card. However, there's loads of it going on, so it's very hard to be picked out as one when you have all this going on all over the pitch. And I don't know how, like, is it the officials having a word? And I know lads are pumped up, and sometimes I've been there, the adrenaline gets hold of you and you just overstep the mark and you pay the price, and it's not nice. But the overall context is, sure, if that's the case, and there could have been 4 or 5 lads put to the line, you know, so it's hard to be the one. I think that's the really hard pill to swallow. And I think it's a big moment as well. It's a big call from a referee to do that right at the start. And I'm not sure, there was another little thing that went on afterwards. Did Alan Tynan's point get cancelled off, if I'm correct? Did Cork then poke that ball out, or was it back to a throw-in?
I think
I'm not 100% sure.
Free, was it? I'm not sure yet, but Cork had the ball, and Cork got the first score of the game then, and that sort of set the tone of it. Okay,
so I'm guessing then is that he let play go on, dealt with the yoke, and awarded Cork a free. I'm not 100% sure, but I suppose the tip point was crossed off. So could that have been, do you know, you say, well, okay, if it's an off-the-ball incident not related to the play, that's okay, Tip should have still had the point. But it was just, I'd be curious, and that's only one little aspect of it, but it triggers then what goes on. But I suppose getting back to the main point, like, you'd have to say like a 2. And like, there was one in the weekend previous, you had, I think, in the Cork Clare match as well, there was an off-the-ball incident, and I don't know, like, was there clear footage? There was a Cork forward and a Clare back were at it. And I think it could have been, was it Hogan and Connolly? And they were digging off the ball. And again, you're going, well, what's going on there? And you know, there was nothing seemed to come out of that. There was the Sunday game footage that I saw anyway, wasn't, you know, you couldn't see exactly what went on. And again, you're going, okay, well, why are we booking the 2 of them? What actually went on here? And, you know, were the officials absolutely clear in what they saw?
Yeah.
And because you're saying, well, is it one lad instigates and the other lad gets booked by association, or what's going on? And it's a hard look. It's difficult. It's a very difficult position.
Yeah, and this is the thing, it sort of encourages the defender to do it again now next time as well. Start of the match, get into him, he might react. Like, the worst case scenario is he reacts and he gets sent off.
Yeah, and does that, like, yeah, you just want to see it. Look, I suppose, and we get it's a championship match, there's a lot at stake, and you want to see lads going at it. But you just want no stupidity, no messing around, like, ideally. Like, we get the ebb and flow of the game. But, like, you just want to see it, lads, here we are. What do we know? We 25 minutes into chatting, and it's unfortunate that this is what we're chatting about. Do you know what I mean? And, like, that's what you don't want, because there was lots of good hurling. And that's, do you know what I mean? And I mean that in the best sense. Like, it's a pity that, but these incidents they've crept in for the last two games, and it's coming to a head a little bit. Like, I think it's at a point where you're saying, right, well, I get the lads jostling into each other, but at the same time, like, there needs to be kept a lid on it, because I suppose if you're a player too, and I try to put myself into these situations, you say, well, I've been involved in that kind of, you deal with it. It's part of the game. Make no bones about it. And I don't know whether we say we can't brush it off as just a part of the game. But from a player's perspective, if you roll the dice and you engage, then, and you give a ref a decision, you have to take your own responsibility for that too. You have to just say, do you know what? Fair enough, I might feel hard done by. It's an awful thing to have done. But ultimately, you have to look at yourself and saying, well, if you're going to give refs decisions to make, lads, and you want to say it out, then you have to, and there's a steep learning curve with that. It comes at a heavy price.
Yeah, the refs just need to get the ball in as well. Just get the thing going, because everyone's piped up at that stage. It's like, just throw it in and it'll settle down, and we'll all start focusing on the...
What if we go back to old school, everyone is at the clash.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think that's all the talking points I had. I'm only winding you up. So, obviously, Cork, it's hard to find new things to say about them anyway, and then in this game, it's hard to really get a read on them because of what happened, because the 14 men from the off. But I suppose they still look class. I mean, Declan Dalton, Patrick Horgan up top, just running amok. They seem like they have it any way you want, and they're just getting stronger, it seems, as the summer's coming in.
Yeah, they quickly after, like, obviously they just got going, and they set fire. They caught fire very quickly, and in 16 minutes, I think they 3-8 or something on the board. And I remember at that point, I was like, oh God, this is going to be an awful game if this continues at this rate. Like, it's going to be shocking. But I suppose Cork as well, it's possibly difficult to prepare for that too, or to, like, you look at your scenarios in the run-up to match. That's not one of them that you would generally... Yeah. You might say, well, what do we do if we do get an extra man? And you go, oh, that could be later in the game. You don't expect to have it from the outset. Yeah. And then there's an adjustment around that, and it feeds into your psyche then. So it can kind of rattle you. And I think that rattled Cork for a while too, after they got that 3-8. And in fairness to Tip, I think they dug in. I think you thought that they're staring death in the face there. And they could be forgiven for saying, do you know what, it's one of those days, we're just going to be putting this in the dustbin afterwards and we move on. But to be fair to them, they dug in and they fought very, very valiantly. And I felt they had two very good goal chances in that first half. Sam O'Farrell and maybe Craig Morgan had them. And I just thought, if they had been able to get those two goals at that stage, it suddenly starts feeding into Cork's, like, tipper on momentum. The crowd will get behind them. And I think that 14 wides, maybe 3 or 4 from frees. So it still was there. They could have had it a lot closer, but obviously then, look, with Cork's levels of fitness, and this is getting back to your point, the power that they have, the artillery that they have. But I think central to that was their senior guys were the leaders there. Harnedy was excellent. Hoggy was excellent. Yeah. Dalton. And then, look, Brian Hayes he's just floating around. He's just his phenomenal skill level.
Yeah.
And they have that power, and they have the bench as well. So I suppose they still have plenty to work on, but they look to be and they're getting good challenge. Like, okay, that match petered out with 10 minutes to go. Tip fought valiantly and kept within arm's length of them, but at the same time, they're being asked questions different days, and that's good for them. Like, they very nearly came out with Clare with nothing last week.
Yeah,
they very nearly came out with Ennis with nothing, and that could have fed into the heads too. Like, so they've steadied the ship a little bit now, but they look awesome, and we're not. I suppose they're hearing that a lot now, and sometimes that talk can set you up for a failure. But I think they have absolutely justified this talk. they are an awesome outfit.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be the level of attrition. And Rob Downey now has come off in both games. And just for Cork, I think he's an important guy for Cork. They need him on the pitch.
Yeah, it puts Tipperary in a bit of a perilous position now. Like, to start the championship well, they get the point against Limerick, and then they're coming down to Cork, and you're thinking, geez, they could do something here. Obviously, what happens is different now, but they have to go to Ennis next week. Clare, what's going on with Clare? I mean, this was a bad result on the face of it. I think the penalty was harsh. I think it's Adam Hogan that gives it away. It was given for a wraparound tackle. But that seemed to sort of separate the teams initially. I sort of was watching this thinking, Clare will get back into the ascendancy here eventually. But every time they look like doing that, Waterford would get another goal or Stephen Bennett would produce something out of nothing.
Well, what was, I suppose, and this is where the Munster Championship can be so attritional, right? Because week on week. So Clare probably had to go really deep to pull out that result the week before. So again, during the week, trying to get the freshness back in. And I thought at times they looked leggy, they didn't look lively. And I thought then for the second half of the first half, I thought their game management was brilliant because they figured out Waterford. They started to carry hard, they played against the conditions, and both teams played excellent, nearly better against the winds than they did with the wind. And I thought, God, they got some great points. Meehan got 2, I think Ryan Taylor got 2, Rogers got 2. They were in good, they looked to be in good shape. And then, for whatever reason it was, it looked like they ran out of juice. I think they ran out of juice, and that Waterford were obviously fresh. And the worry is that they're coming straight in cold, whereas Clare had the championship match, so they'd be up to the pace. And I thought myself, just like what you said there, I thought Clare, after weathering this storm now, and they'll kick into gear. But they actually they couldn't seem to find their men inside at all. Like, whatever it was, they seemed to be trying to get it to the middle third and shoot, whereas Waterford seemed to go back in there and make that a battle zone and then use that platform to carry the ball, like through Jamie Barron and different guys. And I thought Kiley was a big impact. But whatever it is, Clare they look a little bit tired would from what I'm seeing. But I suppose also too, you're minus Shane O'Donnell, you're minus Tony Kelly, Diarmuid Ryan was injured, Conor Cleary is not there. Like, they're 4 guys that were central to you getting over the line in an All-Ireland final after a big campaign. So they're big losses. They're leaders. One of them maybe you might manage without. So they were missing a few personnel. But yeah, like you said there, themselves and Tip now have a huge game, and it's possibly curtains for the loser of that match.
Yeah, it's mad, and again it shows the strength of the Munster Championship, where you're looking at it now after 2 games being like, oh my God, like 2 of these teams are gone, and it could be 2 ones that you just didn't account for. But like the injuries are one thing for Clare, but then I think like bad habits have now crept in, and maybe that's because of the legginess, maybe because of the confidence. But the second goal, the one that Bennett gets, that's like the keeper doesn't go for it. None of the Clare defenders are interested, and Bennett's the only one who follows the ball to the end line, catches it, steps back in.
But this is where there's a little bit of local knowledge, right? Bennett has hurled in that pitch a long time, and I've hurled down there a few times, and usually the wind is coming the other way. It's coming the opposite way of the few times I've played down there. But in the first half, you'll recall there was a few shots that just seared off across, and they actually almost, the wind held them up that they didn't even go wide. And Bennett, again, ever aware, and he'd always be looking at things. Like, you could see very quickly on the replay, I said, oh, geez, he actually twigged where that ball was landing straight away. And John Conlon probably turns his back and goes, that's gone wide. Whereas, like, he'd be always trying to say to defenders and everyone, keep your eye on the ball. And you'd say, maybe, does Quilligan twig it too late as well in goal, that maybe it's for him to go and balk it and get it out? But it was the ultimate blow. It was the end of it, unfortunately. And look, I suppose the one thing that's lost in this too is credit to Waterford, because I thought they were in difficulty coming to half time. I said, Clare after rallying, but by God, they came out with a shift in the second half, and they put in a serious shift, and they seem to blow Clare away. But I suppose what we can't forget either, Clare All Ireland champions, they had a big massive campaign. There's a lot of these boys on the road 4 and 5 years, and that just over time, it just wears into you. Like, John Conlon is he 35 or thereabouts? Davy Mack is in his 30s. There's a lot, and the game now is very, very, you're up and down, you're all over the place, so you're covering big mileage. So look, Clare have been in last two All-Ireland semi-finals, a replayed All-Ireland last year, Munster finals for the last couple of years, league finals. So there's a fair bit of mileage there, and like, it's understandable, I suppose. Maybe that's why they just looked a little bit leggy the other day, but they had a heavy match against Cork, and like I said, they had to go right into the reserve tanks to get that result.
And then we already touched on this game up in Park, Wexford against Dublin. I mean, I was watching this and the atmosphere, I was like, this is why Dublin should actually want to play there as much as possible. Hurlers, footballers, like the atmosphere at Park is electric when there's a game like this, especially. And then when they got that run of 3 goals, it was just phenomenal viewing. But the Dara Power flick under his legs, I mean, this is one of the best things I've seen, Eddie. I mean, I don't ask for much, but just that little, I think it was O'Sullivan that went up and made this great catch for the 3rd goal, and it's thrown down and it goes to the ground, and Power reacts by just batting it under his legs, and it goes through to Hetherington, who just blasts it in. And like, that was just, I thought that really summed up this game. There was just so much drama, colour almost, and noise.
I was saying, the pitch.
Yeah. The pitch.
This looks like the pitch was a bit off colour as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the lines go through.
The grounds, man, I hope there was no one pranking him and put a little bit of spray into the whatever. But yeah, look, and to see that's the type of stuff I love seeing lads do. Like, you know, you see lads, just the awareness, knowing, and they're seeing the game. It's like the good soccer players or the good rugby players. They're seeing where it's all going to happen, and said, right, the movements, and just such a simple little deft touch, and it creates a goal where other times you're trying to maybe gain possession and give a pass and you're blown out of it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So just sometimes that hurling intellect kicks in, and it's from doing those little bits and pieces, and then you suddenly, just that's a good move, or that's the right thing to do, and you're passing it out to a buddy. And Hetherington, geez, he finished both those goals with aplomb.
Oh, it really did. And that Power, you're right, like, because another hurler just picks that up and tries to get out of the bodies, and then just that instinct, like.
But even that alone, that, like, the placement of John Hetherington inside there, like, he is a big, strong guy. He has a great paw. Remember Dublin playing Laois one night in a match up in Abbottstown, and they identified, I suppose, a shorter cornerback and threw Hedgehoe in on him, and straight away you had, I think, Ronan Hayes on the other side of the square. So you put your twin towers in there. And the boys were the crisscross ball. Henderson with a right-hander, he's going to lean the back here, and he's big enough and strong enough. And like, it's a cute tactic. And I suppose it's something that I wonder, do managers say, oh, I don't like the height difference there. That's not good. You know, you want someone that's, like, again, okay, throw Tommy Welsh into the mix. He was as good as anyone in the air. But at the same time, that's a red flag. If you're looking around the pitch going, what are they doing here? Oh, he's in there now, and he has nearly a foot on that defender. Yeah. And suddenly, and he's able to hurl as well. Yeah.
Just to finish up, I think everyone in Kilkenny is probably just loving this way that they've slipped under the radar. I mean, I can't help but notice that they are flying in the Leinster Championship here. They've won 2. They are by far on top. 30 points difference, plus 30 points difference. Beating Galway. They went and they give Antrim a good seeing then as well up there. I mean, Kilkenny are going really nicely. I imagine everyone in there is just, you keep talking about Cork all you like.
Yeah, it's funny because I would have been, and again, it was shared around Kilkenny, we were kind of not deeply worried, but you were very concerned about the heaven and hell aspects to not beating Galway.
Yeah.
If you don't beat Galway, and I was dreading kind of Kilkenny going to Antrim saying, well, they could end up dealing with something very left field tactical that could just upset them. And then you're seeing the scoreline at one stage, you think Antrim were going to point up, or you're going to. But going back to the point, once Kilkenny got Galway out of the way, and then they were in a good headspace heading up, minus a few injuries, which is a concern. Yeah. You go, God, I don't like going to places that are tricky without your full artillery. But at the same time, if Kilkenny have ambitions of winning an All-Ireland this year, they have to be able to go and do that, minus 2 or 3 players. Yeah, like that's the way it has to be. You have to be able to put opposition that you say, look, we have to be putting a score here. We have to look after our own side. And Derek now is in a good position, far from the finished article, but they're in a good position. They get the next bit of business done, I think is Offaly in 2 weeks' time. You get your result there. You're in control of your own destiny. You say, we can get to wherever. And the point being, what you're saying there, Conan, is Kilkenny now can, a bit like back in the day, roll through the Leinster campaign. I'm not saying the Leinster campaign is done or anything like that, but you're coming out of the Leinster campaign without having to be put to the pin of your collar, and then you're spiking. You're spiking at the right time. Yeah. And look, obviously Munster is being played at a different level at the moment, but at the same time, Dublin on their day are more than capable of playing to a really, you know what I mean? And Galway, whatever's going on, I don't know, but they're more than capable as well. But yeah, the point being, Kilkenny now are in a decent position, but they just have to build on it and make sure they take care of business. And then you need to really spike hard then, because they've seen the last couple of years, to live with the Munster teams. But yeah, look, as a Kilkenny person, we're happy with where we are. And yeah, that's maybe that'd be a grand way to play out. We can just breathe nice in and let the boys tear lumps out of each other.
Yeah, because that's certainly what Galway and Wexford are going to be doing in 2 weeks' time. They're playing each other, and they really, both of them, need to win there. They can't afford the other team.
Big time,
beat them. Yeah, meanwhile, Kilkenny have Offaly at Nolan Park. Eddie, thanks a million for your time, and I hope next time we're on, there's plenty more red cards to talk about and flash.
No bother at all, Conan. All the best.
See you later.